Hello everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here, and in this video I'm going to give you 5 reasons as to why you should play Pan Oceania. That's right, the hyperpower faction gets the focus this time, and I've got 5 great reasons as to why you should consider playing them if you haven't considered it already. Number 1, the biggest reason, well, one of the biggest reasons as to why you should play Pan Oceania is because they're simply the best. Now that has been confirmed by CB, that has been confirmed in the lore. They are just well known for being the best faction in all of Infinity. Now I know some of you might not agree with that, but let's face it, deep down inside, we know it to be true. There is no faction better, there never will be, they are the best, and they forever will be. This is slightly tongue-in-cheek, obviously, because the best faction in Infinity is all of them to some people, but in terms of the lore and in terms of the creativity, that is how they are positioned. They are the knights in shining armour, pretty much literally, and they are the biggest faction that is out there. In terms of the model count, in terms of the amount of lore that exists, in terms of the background history, Pan Oceania kind of has it all. So that is one of the biggest reasons I think why you should play Pan Oceania, is if you want to be the biggest and the best, then you can't really look at anyone other than Pan Oceania. The second reason why I think you should play Pan Oceania is because it represents some of the best countries in the world. So if you don't know much about the lore of Pan Oceania, it is an amalgamation of several countries on modern day Earth, but obviously we're 180 years in the future, and they came together to venture out into space and to set up the human sphere, and they're pretty much responsible for some of the most successful elements of the human sphere. But some of the nations that made up that was one that's very close to my heart, New Zealand. It's now where I live. I've chosen it as my home, and you know, I'm not entirely sure what Britain ended up doing throughout all of this human sphere, but oh yeah, they're Ariadne, because they were one of the first, messed it up, got lost, and now have bears and wolves and dogs on their sides. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what Britain did. And then following their failures, places like New Zealand, Australia, India, Southeast Asia came together and formed Pan Oceania and got it all right. So that's another reason why I'm slightly biased. I think you should play Pan Oceania, is because countries like New Zealand are represented in that faction, and New Zealand is a pretty good country. The third reason why I think you should play Pan Oceania, and this one's a little bit more serious, is because the breadth of models, the breadth of units, the breadth of sectorials that are in there is second to none. Maybe Eugene comes close in terms of the amount of sectorials that sit under that faction, but if you are looking to only get into one faction, but you don't know what you want to do and you want the greatest variety of options out there, but you want to stay loyal to one faction, Pan Oceania is going to be one that you should look at, because there are several sectorials within there. There are different flavours of play. You've got super defensive, you've got very aggressive, you've obviously got military orders, which are quite aggressive and very heavy infantry focused. You've got more camo tokens, you've got Varuna, who are pretty good at camo, sniping, all that sort of stuff. Things like the Libertos are very good defensive ARO pieces. So there's a lot in Pano. So even if you're just committing to one faction, you're trying different sectorials, trying different units, you can stay within Pano and go quite far with that. So if you're basically looking for one faction, you don't want to be tempted by any of the others, and you still want a huge range of options, Pan Oceania is probably going to be the one for you. Another reason why you should play Pan Oceania is because they have some of the best units in the game. I know I've said this about a couple of, well, I think I said this for O12, because it's kind of true. They do have some of the best units, but Pan Oceania really does. They've got arguably one of the best tags in the game, even though it didn't make my top 5 list. The Jotun is an absolute beast. The Cutter is a really good option in there. And they've also got the Tick Balang, which did make my top 5 tags. There's a decent amount in the tag category alone that will keep you occupied for a while, and some of them are really good. They've also got options in terms of the heavy infantry, the fast attack, the camo tokens, the snipers. I've said this as well, you know, they've got the variety and they've got the breadth, but when you actually look at specialist units in there, they've got some of the best ones out there. I mean, it's difficult for people to talk about Pan Oceania and not also talk about someone like Joan of Arc necessarily, or like I said, the Jotun. There are typical conversations where it naturally drifts towards a Pan Oceanian unit, and that's no coincidence. There are some seriously strong units in the game. And there's going to be a couple of factions I'm going to talk about in the future where they are stronger in some ways. But again, Pan Oceania, if it's not number 1, other than being the number 1 hyperpower, if it's not number 1 in terms of the unit in that section, it's going to be a close second or third where there is an option in there. And then finally, the final reason why you should play PanOceania is I think they've got a really big player base. They have got lots of people that are out there optimizing the playstyle for the lists and for the units out there. There are several places you can go to get some really excellent knowledge on how to play that faction. Just off the top of my head, Heart of the Hyperpower, I think that's a forum from a guy out of New Zealand. He is excellent and used to do, I don't know if he still does, but I've read a few articles where there's some really good thoughts on how to play the faction out there. You go almost anywhere. I mean, someone in Goonhammer's probably playing PanOceania will be able to give you some good lists. You go to any tournament, there's likely to be PanOceania players that are playing at that top tier, and they're always willing to give you advice and give you ideas on how you can play the faction. So I think that's it for my number 5. I think the amount of tier 1 knowledge that's out there for this faction makes it worth considering if you at all want to be able to be playing lists that are optimized, really competitive. There are definitely people out there that are going to help you achieve that, and that can't be said for all factions because sometimes they're so niche that they're more casual side than they are competitive side, and the casual side of things, there's so much variety that people might not be talking about the play styles as much because it's very personal to them. With PanOceania, you will be able to see those tier 1 players, how they play, and you'll be able to look at their play styles and learn a bit from them. So there you go, that's it. You have my 5 reasons as to why I think you should play PanOceania. On top of those 5, you've also got some great support out there. There's the Military Orders Action Pack that's fairly new, PanOceania Battle Pack that's now transitioned into, which means that it's easy to get into because you can buy these boxes and you can buy these sets, and you can get into the faction really quickly by starting with several hundred points, a couple of hundred points with boosters, expansions, and have a really competitive army very quickly without necessarily needing to break the bank. So I hope you've enjoyed these reasons as to why you should play PanOceania. Jump in the comments if you think there are other reasons as to why you should give the Hyperpower faction a go. I'd love to see those reasons, and also if you are a Eugene player and you want to just give us some reasons as to why you should hate PanOceania, jump in the comments as well. It's good to have a little bit of flavour in there. Thanks so much for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I will be back soon.